Welcome to The Backstory, a podcast from the North Dakota News Cooperative that takes an in-depth look at the stories we're reporting for you. I'm Sabrina Halvorson, CEO of the North Dakota News Cooperative. Joining me is Michael Standaert, our lead reporter. So Michael, the story we're talking about this week is about H-1B visas, and the headline was $100,000 fee for H-1B visas has local workforce impacts. Now, you started out at taking a deep look at how these visas will affect schools around North Dakota. And you and I have talked about this before. In fact, when we were talking about the story before, I didn't realize how much schools around the state relied on H-1B visas for teachers. And so this additional fee could be a significant problem for them.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few schools across the state that do use these. I mean, I wasn't aware of how reliant they'd been on these. I think in Grand Forks, the school district there had 64 over the last 5 years. Newtown, 42, Dunseith, 14. I mean, others have a smattering of these. A lot of them are in tribal areas. Newtown is one example where it's difficult for them to recruit teachers, so they often turn to these to either J1 visas or H1B visas as well. The thing with the J1 visas is that those people can only stay 3 years with a maximum of 5 years after some extensions. So then they lose those teachers. They don't have the continuity with the H1B. It can be renewed annually, and those people can actually have a path to citizenship and a green card through that process. So a lot of these areas like it because it will give them more continuity and possibly keep that teacher in the community for a long time, particularly if they do become a citizen. So it's become an important aspect for those schools to find teachers. So there's just a teacher shortage in general, and attracting people to teach in some rural areas can be a challenge.
Yeah, that was something I saw online. The story was shared online by one of our news partners, and a comment to their post, somebody said, well, North Dakota universities train so many teachers. How can we possibly have a teacher shortage? So what would you say to that?
Well, I mean, there's a huge need. I mean, and then it's not just, there might be a bunch of teachers trained at universities. They might not all want to, relocate to a small town or a reservation, something like that. So it can often be difficult for those areas to recruit teachers, even if the pay is pretty good. So I guess that's an extra issue for them.
Right. Yeah, it's not like schools are turning away teachers.
No, and then I mean, I would have to look into kind of those universities and where those teachers end up going. I mean, I would suspect that, many do go out of state too. They get trained here, they don't stay here.
Right.
So, or they go to Bismarck, Fargo, Grand Forks, some other areas. And, the rest might go to Minnesota, go elsewhere in the Midwest or somewhere else across the country. So, it's kind of difficult to know where they go. But there's definitely a shortage in rural communities, tribal areas, reservations, where it can be difficult to bring people in.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of us know it takes somebody really special to want to go and live and work in a really rural area of North Dakota. Not a lot of people want to do that. And so finding teachers to fill these schools has been really difficult. You spoke with one person for this article, Mark Bluestone, and he said that this is absolutely going to have an effect on his school district. What was he telling you?
Yeah, no, so they've had quite a few H-1B visas over the years, mostly, teachers from the Philippines. They do use the J-1 visa as well. But, they're not going to be able to afford a $100,000 fee for, one H-1B visa or multiple visas. They can't afford that. So most of these schools and teachers and hospitals as well, universities, they're hoping there'll be some kind of carve out that waives that fee for them. I know this one school, since it's on a Bureau of Indian Education school, they had a waiver for the fee. So it'll be interesting, going forward to see if they do get waivers for these fees.
Yeah, and he was with the Newtown School District, I believe.
Yes.
And so as you were doing the research for this story and learning more about H-1B visas, which you already were very familiar with, but explain for our listeners a little bit about how those visas work and what those fees are for.
Well, the fees, I guess in the past had only been, a few $1,000s. So it's not really comparable to what they would have to pay now with this new order. And you know, even with the J1 visa, there's fees with those. But I think, like I said before, a lot of the schools, would like to have the continuity of having someone on an H1B visa. So they go that route. And a lot of times somebody might come in on a J1 visa, they kind of see how they're doing, and then they'll go back to their country and they'll apply for H1B visa to come back and then, stay in that community. So for those teachers who have shown an interest in, okay, we really want to be here, they really like to have those people back. So I think that's one issue that's ruffling some of the feathers of some of these superintendents is like, okay, we've used these in the past to bring people in who really want to be in our community, and they can't do that in another way because the J1 visa is so temporary.
So we've kind of focused a little bit on the elementary schools, but that's not the only school type that this is affecting, right?
Yeah, universities. I mean, the most petitions for the H-1B visas are from universities in the state. So, UND, University of North Dakota, and North Dakota State, they have the highest number of these, but it's for, professors, visiting teachers, they have an international reach and they have courses that they would like to fill with professors, and they're trying to get the best professors they can. So it's something that they've used for some time, and it's also affecting hospitals as well, who have doctors and nurses and other therapists, but probably at a lesser degree than universities and elementary, middle schools, K through 12 schools.
And there are some other industries as well that this would be affecting. I mean, you mentioned the healthcare as well, but
Yeah, so I mean, when the Trump administration put this together, it was targeting, these major companies like, Meta, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, these kind of companies because of the perceived overuse of getting these visas to get employees in. Maybe maybe that's a fair comment. I don't know, but I think a lot of people think that they did not really think this through about how it would impact others who are using these visas. So, particularly the schools and universities and healthcare. But there are some, I think there was one tech company here in the state that had quite a high number. I was not able to get a hold of them to talk to them about this, but for the most part in the state, it has been, you know, um, universities, healthcare, and K through 12 schools using this.
and so somebody that you spoke with for the interview said that they're basically just hoping that waivers will come out, that there will be an opportunity for waivers to happen.
Yeah, a lot of the people I spoke with either have reached out to the congressional delegation to ask if they could get waivers. One person had shared a bunch of stories from different schools about how could impact them. I mean, no school could probably afford $100,000 to just to get a teacher in.
Right.
So that was kind of the common theme that, okay, nobody's going to be able to pay for this. So, how is it, what's going to be the effect going forward? Mark Bluestone in Newtown had said, well, if this does happen, if there's no waivers, that could, increase the classroom size, something that they'd had in the past. So, 40, 50 kids in a classroom if they don't have enough teachers. So they're really trying to avoid that by using these visas for teachers, particularly in these areas where it's difficult for them to attract teachers.
Yeah. One thing that we haven't talked about yet, because we've been talking so much about schools and how this will affect them, but also commercial driver's licenses. This could have an effect on that as well. Will you explain that?
Yeah, this is a separate policy. So there was an order that came out from the transportation department to states around the country. This is mostly targeting California. I guess in California they had, I think, around 25% of the people who were with CDLs in the state. They weren't necessarily undocumented, but they might not have had the right status to be driving. So they issued an order to states around the country to rectify the CDL process so that anyone who does not have a certain visa type cannot have the CDL. So in North Dakota, 190 people had their CDLs revoked because they did not qualify. I think the only ones that can are H2B, H2A, and E2 can have CDLs. So this is affected. I mean, again, this impact, it's not a very big number for the state. I mean, there's about 50,000 CDLs issued per year, but an acute impact is happening with this in Newtown because they've 3 of their H-1B visa staff also got their CDLs in the past couple of years. So they've had to turn their licenses because they're on H-1B visas and they're not supposed to have a CDL on an H-1B visa. So they've lost 3 bus drivers because of that, and that could impact their ability to transport kids to school and to different events. Michael Standaert, who's with the group FM Volunteers for Ukraine, Fargo-Moorhead Volunteers for Ukraine. Paroli, he sponsors, lost his CDL license because of this, and he knows of another one who's had this impact them as well. So that's another policy change that has impacted some people here.
So would this have an effect on agricultural drivers as well? Those with the CDL who are driving for harvest for sugar beets going on right now, or for corn, soybeans?
Well, yeah, I think it's the H-2B visa that's the agricultural visa. What is that?
H-2A is
Oh,
agricultural.
it's agriculture. Okay,
Yeah.
H-2A. So H-2A is still okay.
Okay.
So anyone with H-2A can still have a CDL license, and it's mainly affecting anyone who was out of those different. There were like 3 different visas that they could have to still retain their CDL. So mainly this would affect anyone like what I mentioned with Newtown, who had a H-1B visa, and others who were on different visas but had CDLs in the past.
Sounds like Newtown is really kind of taking a hit right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's kind of shift focus a little bit. And what we like to do sometimes in the podcast is media literacy also. So we talk about what it is to be a journalist or a reporter. And working on a story like this, as we were just talking about it, I was thinking about all the things that you had to learn as a reporter that you don't always think about, but you've had to learn about the H-1 or B visas and the difference between that and the J visas and what all of these different things do. And so when you're working on a story like this that is very intricate, how do you do all this research and make sure that you get everything that the readers need to know?
Yeah, I mean, what my first way into this story was actually on the CDL part. So I had heard about the CDL changes and I started to look at that. And then I was like, I started looking at the H-1B visa part 2 because I had heard this could have some impact to universities mainly. And then when I looked at the numbers, so if you go to the U.S. Citizen and Immigration Service website, you can go into all their different numbers about what institutions got these this year, last year. You can go back many years. I looked at mainly the last 5. And then, from that, you have to go look at, okay, what is an H-1B visa and why is it important? How much does it usually cost to get one? All these sort of things. So you're just looking at a wide range of sources of information to kind of educate yourself quickly. And then basically you reach out to the institutions that might be impacted to hear, okay, is this actually affecting you? What are you planning to do to try to, see if you can lobby against it? This sort of thing.
A lot of background goes into writing a story like this.
Yes, with many stories, you gather a bunch of information first and you just start looking at all that information. And then oftentimes in that information are institutions or names of people that you think you should try to reach out to. So that's kind of a way through it. You're just going to sift through it all and then kind of whittle it down to the key details.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for all of your work on this story.
Thank you.
And again, that article was headlined $100,000 Fee for H-1B Visas Has Local Workforce Impacts. You can read that story on our website at newscoopnd.org or in one of our local newspaper partners. For the North Dakota News Cooperative, I'm Sabrina Halvorson. This has been The Backstory.